Welcome to the roller coaster of midlife live on YouTube. Welcome back. We've taken a little bit of a break, but I am so happy to be back here with Holly. Holly, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm so glad to be back, Lucy. I missed you.
I
I missed you.
I know I missed you too, but it's great to be back. And before we took our little break,
Yep.
we had an episode where we were talking about our relationships and how they change in midlife. And
Yep.
that was our relationships with, more of the external.
Yeah.
And it was in that episode that you mentioned relationship with yourself. And that's after I asked a bit of a cheeky question.
Mhm.
And that's when I asked everybody just to take a moment and to really think about those 5 people that you're closest to. And then I went on to ask, did you include yourself on that list?
That's right.
And it's a question that's met with
Yep.
surprise because we often think about the people that we're close to, and you think of, families and friends and partners, even a mentor. But how often are we actually thinking about ourselves and our relationship with ourselves?
It's funny that you said that because and here I am doing this work. So you think I would be thinking more of it, but I recently decided to do one of my own values assessment over again. I often tell my clients, do them manually because things are changing a lot every year. So what you might have valued last year may not be relevant now. And it's really important we align ourselves accordingly. That was a total eye opener for me. It is totally different than what I had last year. And believe it or not, the second one, my first core value is humility. The second one was self-love. Lucy, it never, ever, in all the years I've been doing this, has ever made it on my list of core values. How crazy sad is that? And it came instinctually. So I was very excited because I was like, oh, I think I'm showing some growth here, that I'm actually even thinking this. In the past, it was about accomplishment, achievement, productivity. Then it started shifting more to growth and peace of mind. Now it's completely different. And the second one on my list is self-love. And I'm telling you, knowing that that is something I want to align with, in the back of my mind, I am really showing up differently. And I'm being very cognizant of loving myself in a way that I never have before. And it made me really think about all the strategies that I shared with people. And I realized, I think I came down to a 4-step process to cultivate self-love. But this is all just recently. I took a little bit of this, I took a little bit of that. And I was like, I think it comes down to 4 basic principles. And I'm testing it out, but I'm sharing that also with some clients. So I'm really excited to dive in today to share.
Yeah. Don't you find, though, that, how do I explain this? On the journey, when you're on a journey of self-growth, don't you find that you just naturally find yourself at a place, let's call it a road marker, where you just realize that some things just are?
Yeah.
And that concepts are things that you used to have to work towards, in your, whether it comes down to being mindful of what you're thinking about, or, what you're putting in your body, all of these different things. But then you reach a point where it just is who you are. So the same thing with you and self-love is, you've just gotten to a point in your journey where this is who you are.
Yeah. But I think I agree. And I think it's after all the years of pulling back the layers and continuing to honor my other core value of growth is where it's really led to that to me. But, I'd like to think I was practicing it on some level all these years, but the fact that it never made my list just blows my mind. Because the truth is, self-love really impacts every aspect of our life. It's the core of our well-being. I think it's obvious is our relationships, with others, whether they be intimate or peer relationships, but how we show up in the community, at work, is all about how we love ourselves. I mean, let's go back to that, silly analogy. Well, it's not so silly. The analogy that everyone uses of the flight attendant, you have to put your oxygen mask on first before helping others. But I tell you, for midlife women, this is a very tricky thing to do. We were not ever socialized, to do this. From day one, we were socialized for perfectionism. Embrace, you can have it all, do it all, and again, all well-intentioned from mothers who did not have, the feminist movement in their lives. They, prodded us that way, and maybe not well-intentioned media, but media telling us, how we should or shouldn't be. And we were just spoon-fed perfectionism. And that's no way to love ourselves, for sure, because that will only land you in defeat and drain and exhaustion and burnout and fatigue. It's not possible to be perfect. I use another term, rather than perfectionism, optimalism. Optimalism is about still rising to the occasion, to the best version of yourself. But the difference between a perfectionist and an optimalist is that individual knows there's only 24 hours in a day. They know they can't have it all at once. They still want to be the best version of themselves. It's not about perfection, but progress. Whereas the perfectionist is about whipping and comparison and not enough. But I mean, I'm all about creating the best version of ourselves, but not the perfect version of ourselves.
Isn't perfectionism rooted in continuously comparing yourself to somebody else?
I think
because
so, yes.
Who's defining what perfectionism is? That's somebody else's expectations. That's whether it's society or religion or family,
Yes.
whatever it is.
Yes.
You're constantly measuring yourself against something else, somebody else's expectations. And when it comes to self-love, I don't think you can have true self-love until you actually know who you are. So to get to who you are, you have, like you said, you have to go back through all of those layers.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have to peel back, you have to do healing, you have to learn, you have to grow, you have to figure out who you are.
Yeah.
And then when you start realizing, hey, I'm a pretty cool chick, then you're like, I like me.
Well, that's another step, I think. I think the first step is letting go of that perfectionist mentality. And I do encourage women to go for an optimalist mentality because, I want to encourage women to, reach their potential and not settle for less than, but in a reasonable way. But now going to what you're saying, as far as, taking a look at your qualities, your strengths. I mean, there's a ton of research, Lucy, on how building upon our strengths is far more effective than trying to bridge the gap of our weaknesses. Yeah, sure, we need to work on these things, but it's all about leaning into our strengths that then can catapult us to other levels of fulfillment as well as potential. And there's a ton of research on that. So, it's all about recognizing our strengths and our qualities, which most women don't ever do. I have an exercise where I have women write down anywhere from 5 to 10 attributes they would describe about themselves. It is so uncomfortable for them to come up with 10. Like it's so hard. I'm like, I don't care, folks, if it's you love your lips. I don't care what it is. Find what are your attributes? These are things that people don't hone in on. Where are your strengths? And a lot of people aren't even aware of them. And there's a lot of actually assessments out there like that are free online, like the VIA Institute. I don't know if you know anything about the VIA Institute.
No.
Yeah, the VIA Institute is all about, learning how to build on your strengths. And they have like a free assessment online. I can actually give you, it's a public link where you can take an assessment and it'll break down, like after you answer a bunch of questions, where your strengths lie, from I think like 1 to 10 maybe. So it's just like another way of, taking a look at, the advantages that we are bringing forward, opposed to taking a look at, we always look at what we're not. What we're less of, opposed to, and what we need to improve, or I suck at this. That's the old tapes that we often
it's easy to look at the things that we're not good at, but I mean, really, can you blame us? Because our entire educational system is built on that very thing. And it was something that I always, much to the disappointment of my kids' teachers, would butt heads with them on. Because I would get a phone call, oh, they have a 56 in math. Great, they're passing. And they're like, what, you're not mad? I'm like, no. I'm like, tell me, does the art teacher call people who only has a 56 in art? No.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
my kids are artists. Why don't you
Yeah.
look at those grades?
Yeah, I know. I hear you. And exactly, those are where their strengths are. And that's where, the attention should be built. Again, I'm not minimizing the need to attend to our weaknesses, because sometimes, we need to, whatever, expand our skills on certain things to get by, but not really. In the bigger scheme of things, if you
No,
think about it, when you become an adult, not so much.
you don't.
You
If
can
you're not
hire
good
somebody
at
to
it,
do it.
yeah. If you're not good at it, then why are you stressing yourself out of it? It's a leadership. I don't know where this quote came from, but I use it with my kids all the time. Is, the gift of a true leader. They don't have all the answers. They just know where to get them from.
I have the 3 Ds. You do it, you dump it, or you delegate it.
Yeah.
Just it's either do it, learn it, know it. If you don't want to, delegate it, or just, do you really have to do it?
Just don't worry about it.
You have to worry. Like, is it really in the scheme of things that important, to have that? And maybe it is. And if it is, then sure, okay, let's work on that. But, I don't even think we even considered it was an option, to go that route as women who grew up in, the 70s,
As
80s.
Gen Xers.
Yeah, as Gen Xers. I just don't think it was ever a consideration. It was, you do it. You become that standard. You live that standard. And it's not until really now are we realizing, no, it didn't lead to anything but pure exhaustion and a whole lot of, self-criticism.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Not good stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. I had one friend that was a perfectionist, and it actually manifested and was making her physically ill. And the line that she said her therapist pulled on her one day is, when are you going to put down the Windex? Like,
Yeah.
not everything has to be shiny and perfect. And,
So true. Right.
it's like,
So true.
what, like when, how shiny does it have to be until you're happy?
Yeah. I could be a little bit more blatant. I'll be like, let's just put your ego to the curb for a second here. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry you think that you can manage it all and do it all, but small factor, you're a human being and you can. So, it's just, it's a tough thing to adjust to because it's ingrained in us. But it's very possible to start shifting the needle. I do think there are ways to cultivate it. There's, again, a ton of research on practicing self-compassion. Kristen Neff, I don't know if you know Kristen Neff.
No.
She's done a lot of work in this area, and she's kind of boiled it down to 3 practices that help cultivate self-compassion, which is not something we're inclined to do. We can be very compassionate to others. Like, we would never tell our children, you know what, forget it. You suck at this. You should give it up. We would never do that. But we do it to ourselves. We beat ourselves up. So let me see if I can remember this, the 3 practices that she talks about to cultivate compassion is the obvious: self-kindness, do unto others as you would do unto yourself, be as kind as you would to others, but also to challenge yourself as much as you might challenge others, right? To rise to the occasion, to cheerlead yourself on. The second component is, I think, I don't know her terminology in this. I'd have to look it up, but basically, humanizing the fact that we're all, we all experience highs and lows, right? Like, it's like it's like a factor of life. So
Right.
To be compassionate about the fact that and I always say this too, I don't know if I ever shared this one with you, but unless you are a psychopath or a dead person, those are the only 2 people in the world who don't experience uncomfortable, painful emotions. You got to be dead or a psychopath. You got to be completely disconnected to yourself or not have a pulse.
Or dead.
Exactly. Because if you're a live human being, you're going to experience painful, uncomfortable emotions. So the second component to that is understanding that that's all a part of the human experience. But the third component, which she makes a point of, which is really very important, is that slippery slope where we honor it, we release it, we understand it, but we don't brood on it. We don't hold it too close to our chest where it suffocates us. So it's where that, if we're experiencing loss, frustration, depression, if we focus on it too much, then we're, going to get stuck in it. So it's that sweet spot of honoring it, yet releasing it and understanding how you can move forward to empower yourself, not brood on it. So that's her prescription for self-compassion. And if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense.
And I think it's very easy for us to focus on the negative and to dwell on those negatives, but we don't give the same weight to all of the positives. And it's the same, I think you sort of said in a previous episode, we don't sit there and go, well, when is this happiness going to end?
When is this high going to end?
It's, and again, we're sort of pre-programmed to focus on those negatives. And I think, that comes back to self-compassion and, our own inner cheerleader.
Yeah. Well, we're all rigged.
That we do have to be able to stand up and say, no, I'm fucking proud of this.
Yeah,
look what I did.
Have to, applaud yourself, especially because a lot of people aren't going to applaud for you. But you make a really important point. We're all rigged to the negativity bias. It's, that also is science. Thanks to our good old ancestors who gave us their DNA, they had to worry about, the avalanche or the saber-toothed tiger coming out to kill them. So the negativity bias was there in order to survive. Like, what's the worst case scenarios? And so we hyper focus on the negativity. Like if we're in an interview with our job or a review with our boss, and they say fabulous things about you, and they mention one thing that you need to work on, we tend to just focus on the one thing that we sucked at rather than looking at the 4 or 5 things they just praised you at. It's just, we're rigged that way. So we have to make a really conscious effort to relish in the good, to celebrate the good. Part of my journey with my clients is having them break out a celebration journey. And every week I ask them to jot down a few things that they can celebrate, whether it's as small as, I got out for a walk every day, or it was as big as I signed, 10 clients or something like that. I don't care what it is, but take the time to really think about, where were my victories this week? What were they? Maybe it was that I decided to take it easy and put my feet up. That could be a victory for yourself, someone who normally drives themselves. So it's a way of flipping the script and taking a look at where you might be really not giving yourself enough credit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's, that's also something that's, when I hear stuff like that, what I hear echoing in my head are, the little girls in the playground saying, oh, you're such a show off.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there's a lot of weight behind why we do these things.
Yeah.
And it does take time to dig down and understand them. And first of all, understand where these thoughts are coming from. And then you have to go through understanding that they're just thoughts. They're not necessarily reality. And once you deal with all of that, then you have to get to, well, who am I? What am I proud of? What do I love about myself? And you have to really get to know yourself and be comfortable with who you are and be comfortable in your own presence. And I think that's something else that we talked about in our last episode about relationships was, being okay spending time with yourself.
I think we were just programmed to be and do more. And then we forgot to really take a look at what's most important for us. It's one of the reasons why I do a values assessment. We're just told, to absorb these standards and values from other people. And we just did that. And we didn't really realize, who we are and what's most important to us. I said, you have to be, in order to be a strong we, you have to have a strong me. It's just the facts. And if we don't know who we are and who our voice is, it's very difficult. A large part of, why we struggle in midlife, what's my greater purpose at this point is because we've been given this prescription all our lives to follow. And now we're at a place where, we're on our own to follow our own prescription. And we're like, humph. Who am I? What do I want to do? And it takes that, level of, deep diving and peeling back the layers to learn more about yourself, to really come to those conclusions. And also you've changed a lot. What you might have once valued back in the day just may not be relevant anymore. So that's another piece of the equation you have to take into consideration when we hit midlife, I do think so. And here's another thing, we talk about self-care and self-love, almost being synonymous. I don't buy it. It's a bunch of bullshit. Self-care, listen, I love a manicure. I love a massage. I love getting together with my girlfriends for dinner. But let's face it, that's not self-care. That's
I was just going to
self-maintenance.
say that's not self-care.
Self-maintenance. That's like a have to. Like these are like to maintain my sanity. This is like maintenance.
Yeah.
True self-care are really doing the hard things that our mind, body, and heart really need. And that may not be so fun and exciting. That might be hard conversations, boundary setting. That might be saying no to the second glass of wine. That may be putting yourself to bed at 10 o'clock versus, 11 or 12. I get it. That's not so sexy, but that's the kind of stuff what true self-care is about, I think that we confuse that. A lot of my clients will say, yeah, you're gonna be so proud of me. I took some time out of my day and I got a pedicure, or I met a friend, and I'm thrilled that they did. But I'm like, let's talk about like true self-love. That's just self-maintenance to me.
Yeah. And for me, my biggest act of self-love, self-care, whatever you want to call it, is rooted in my sacred morning routine, my journaling practice, and doing, the meditation and things like that.
And look how it paid off.
Well, exactly. Oh yeah.
But that was hard to do, Lucy. That was a hard thing to commit to.
It is. And I think somebody once told, a friend of mine once told me, who's, heavy into the spiritual practices, she said, you realize that maybe only 1% of the population has a sacred morning routine like you have.
I believe that.
I'm like, oh, okay, didn't realize.
Oh, you better believe that. Yeah.
But it's just, that's how I practice my self-love, my self-care. And, it's become so ingrained in who I am. Like this past weekend, I was at a conference and I had to leave the house at 7:30 in the morning. And I was like, I'm okay not journaling for 2 days. It was a spiritual conference, so I knew I would be filled up in a different way.
Yeah.
But I was really glad to get back to it today. It was like, saying hello to you after a few weeks of being off the air. It's, my old friend, you're always there with me.
How awesome. Yeah. Well, listen, and that's also how habits and, more supportive behavior happens, is that we have to, remind ourselves, and it's an effort in the beginning until it becomes ingrained in us. And it's just, second nature, like brushing your teeth. But I mean, you're reaping the rewards 100-fold from that journal practice. It's incredible. So, and that's like, again, a hard thing to do. It's not a typical thing to do. It takes effort. And it's also, you're revealing and you're vulnerable and you're exposing yourself in those journals. So, that's what I think true self-care is about. I really do. So I think, there's a number of components to really developing self-love, to cultivating it.
Yeah. You said you had 4 things, didn't you?
Well, we kind of actually hit on it. I mean, I think the first step is moving away from that perfectionistic mindset and embracing more an optimalistic mindset. I think that's number one. I think number 2 is learning how to cultivate self-compassion. We talked about, Kristen Neff, and, as far as, being as kind to yourself as you are to others, and challenging yourself the same, as well as, honoring the suck, but, not allowing it to, brood over and suffocate.
Suck the life out of you.
Yeah, exactly. And then I think the other piece of it that I mentioned was, which we lastly just talked about. Oh yeah, we talked about recognizing the good qualities and our strengths. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. We talked about really taking a look at, what are my attributes? What are my good qualities? That's one of the main reasons why I did my, my Midlife Advantage quiz.
Yes.
I developed that quiz because everyone's always looking at the negatives of aging in midlife. So I said, let's take a look at the midlife advantage here. So shining the light on what your advantages are, your strengths and your qualities, that's a really important thing to do as well. And the 4th thing was the self-care / really what is true self-care,
right?
Doing those hard things. So I think when you combine all those 4 together, it's a powerful way to think about how to foster self-love, because it's a tough thing. As you said earlier, I think, we were programmed as women. It feels self-indulgent. It feels, a little selfish,
Well, I mean,
doing it. Yeah.
For those of us that were mothers,
yes,
we didn't have 5 minutes to ourselves at the best of times.
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
when you did have 5 minutes, yeah, you did kind of feel selfish because you knew that you still had
Right.
all
Right.
this laundry. And chances are that feeling of selfishness, it was something that we were doing to ourselves.
Big time.
But I mean, really, it's not like our to-do list was ever done.
And
I
we were
mean,
about to realize
at what
I
point in
didn't
time,
believe that it would be.
at what point
I
in
think somewhere
time,
along we thought maybe I would stop checking all these boxes. And
yeah,
now we
but
realize that's not the case. I don't know.
even now, is every piece of laundry cleaned and put away?
No.
No, and because that night, guess what? Your dirty laundry starts all over again. Same thing with a clean house.
Oh, I wait, it's so comical. Cause I have my cleaning lady who comes to my house like every 3 weeks, like, so she does like, and no one is allowed to cook, breathe, or move that whole 24 hours. I'm like, there won't be I'm like, I just for 24 hours, I want my house clean. Do not cook, do not do anything, do not eat, stay out of the house. I just want to relish in
I
this.
know what you mean, but I have somebody come in on Friday mornings to
Yeah.
do like a quick sort of,
Yeah.
clean up for me. And it's Fridays that, because my youngest son works away Monday through Friday. We pick him up Friday afternoons.
Right.
And my other son typically can come home for a weekend. So by Friday afternoon, it's just a shitstorm. And there's just like, and I just
Exactly.
resigned myself. It's like the house was clean for 5 minutes.
Exactly.
That's all we can hope for.
Well,
And I
that's
mean,
one of the big things of empty nesting. I'm not going to lie. Like everything where I last left it is still there, and I wake up to a clean house. That's about it.
yeah, none of that. I cleaned the kitchen before going to bed. And where did the pack of rabid raccoons come from when I went to bed?
Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
I
Yeah.
totally know that.
Yeah.
But I mean, even when it was just me and my husband at home, and
Yeah.
the house would get clean on a Friday, guaranteed by late Friday afternoon, somebody dropped something on the kitchen floor. It's just it's like, what do you
Right.
do?
Well, I think that's just the reality now. I mean, we realize that, like, you're not going to be done with the to-do list. The house isn't always going to be clean. I mean, I have to totally release that. I got 3 dogs running in and out
Oh
of my
yeah,
house.
it is a totally
I mean, you
different
don't want to
story.
see my floors. It's a nightmare. But in all, I mean, I think we're willing to let go of this tendency of perfectionism that we had at one time, but the standards were very high. And sometimes we just organically go there. Like we don't even realize we're being self-critical of ourselves or hard on ourselves. But I do think if we start to really practice these 4 types of steps in our lives, I think we can start shifting the needle. It takes time, I mean, hell, look at me. I finally put self-love on my values list just 20
Yay.
years that I'm a coaching now and all that. So, but it takes time, but we have to start somewhere. And if we're not conscious about doing these things, then it will never develop. It will nenever develop. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'm going to make sure I have those 4 points outlined in the show notes. So if you didn't have a pen and paper ready, and you like what Holly was saying there, check out the show notes. I'm gonna put some information in there. Holly, as we wrap up, not everybody may know exactly who you are or what you do. So do you want to just share a little bit about you?
Yeah, sure. I am a midlife coach. I work with women in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. I support them in aging powerfully, not perfectly, but powerfully. And I actually I work with them in groups and privately, and I happen to be launching I call them Midlife Magic meetups. So I'm launching new Midlife Magic meetups this fall, new cohorts, and I'm going to open up my private roster to 4 one-on-ones. And I'll let you in on a little something that no one else knows about. I'm going to actually run a flash sale on those one-on-ones, which is quite the deal, because that's more my pricier ticket, the one-on-ones. So I'm going to run a flash sale on those, but I'm only opening 4 spots to it because that's all I can really add to my roster right now. So yeah, so I help them kick midlife ass and age powerfully. Along the way, it inspires the shit out of me to keep rising to the occasion and meeting wonderful people like you. I always refer to you as the fabulous Lucy Q, because you are fabulous.
Thank you.
And yeah, more collaborations together as much as possible, I hope.
Yeah, we'll keep going. And for those who don't know who I am Lucy Q, host of the Roller Coaster of Midlife podcast. It is a podcast available on all platforms as well as here on YouTube. Because of my love and passion for journaling, I do have a guided journal available on Amazon. It's called Your Journaling Journey. And I am also working on a second book. This
Oh,
is going to be a fable style book where I share the teachings of my specific journaling practice that I created, where you take an affirmation and you combine it with your why. I call them why formations. So I am writing a fable style novel to help share and teach those practices with everybody. And hopefully that should be available by Black Friday.
wow, that's soon. That's exciting.
Got a lot of work to do, Holly.
That you do. That you do. But you know where you're going with it. So that's
I get these crazy ass ideas and I'm like, it has to be done.
Yeah.
And it has to be done for this. And I'm also doing a whole rebrand. So,
Oh boy, you are busy.
or should I say my husband is?
All right. So we're both going to be busy this year.
Yeah, it's going to be
Yeah.
exciting, but we're going to keep these conversations going on Tuesdays. Now we're getting back to the swing of things. And I think next Tuesday we are talking about relationships again, aren't we? Wasn't there a third one?
No, I don't know. I mean, we certainly could think about it. We talked about relationships, peer and intimate, and we were talking about our love of ourselves. I'm not sure. Was there a third?
I can't remember.
I don't know.
Nano brain.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was kind of hoping if there was a third.
I am
we
just
would
getting back
remember.
into the swing of things after a 3-day Labor weekend here, Labor Day weekend here.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
if you have any questions or topics that you would like us to chat about, or maybe you want to join into one of these conversations, make sure you hit us up with a comment in the notes below. And please do make sure that you like, share, and subscribe to this channel, because our greatest power is in our community. So until next Tuesday, everybody keep riding the roller coaster of midlife.
Take care. Bye-bye.